Good morning. Whenever historians are asked to take a poll about who was the greatest president, it's fascinating that it almost always winds up being the same. And this is down through the years. Right now, number five seems to oscillate between Ronald Reagan and Dwight Eisenhower. Number four is usually Teddy Roosevelt. Number three, FDR. Number two, George Washington. And number one, always, is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is an amazing man, was an incredible president. With all the struggles he had to deal with the country coming apart, with all the passion about this issue of slavery and how he could hold it together through 4 horrible, gut-wrenching years. He was an amazing man. He saved the Union. He freed the slaves. He is the one who has given us a hope for the tomorrow. Did an amazing job. That's why I enjoyed so much yesterday in church as we were looking at the Apostle Paul and what he had to say in his letter to the Romans as he was talking about trying to hold the church together, and then looking at The Odd Couple, which is the series title, by looking at Abraham Lincoln and Edwin Stanton, a Republican president, a Democrat that he asked to be his Secretary of War. It was fun trying to do research about them, what they was like and how were they different. But as I was researching all of these things on Lincoln and Stanton for yesterday's sermon, I also got to looking and found a few other things that were interesting about Abraham Lincoln that I didn't get to use in my sermon yesterday. For instance, Abraham Lincoln, as you may remember, was shot and killed in Ford's Theater. It was about a year ago. Marsh and I led a group of young people in their 20s and 30s, early 30s to Washington, D.C. And we went on a trip to go to the Bible Museum and go to the Holocaust Museum and the African American Museum, but we also went to Ford's Theater. It's still in use today. It's sitting there in Ford's Theater, seeing the box where President Lincoln had been that night. It was an eerie feeling. It was so strange to think here was this incredible, great man, the greatest president in our history, and that's where he died. They carried him across the street. We went across the street. It was to this building where they took him to an upstairs bedroom, and that's actually where he died. What I got to reading about was how in the Library of Congress there is a box that contains the things that were in Lincoln's pockets the night that he was killed. Kind of an interesting thing to think about. What was he carrying on him? What was in his pockets the night that he died? There was a handkerchief with the letter A stitched on it, obviously. There was a couple of pair of glasses, reading glasses in there. There was a small penknife. He actually was carrying a $5 bill. Interesting thing was, it was Confederate money. But then he also carried several newspaper clippings. Several old newspaper clippings were in there. And when you read them, what you discovered was they were newspaper clippings that were talking about Abraham Lincoln and what a great job he was doing. It's fascinating when you think about it. Abraham Lincoln, we look at him and we call him the greatest president we've ever had. But in his day, he had so many detractors, so many people who were criticizing him and pulling on him. It's kind of like he needed to somehow have somebody saying, "You're doing a great job." Even for a leader as great as him, he needed a little bit of affirmation and encouragement. If he needed it, just stop and think about how much the people around you need it. People get beat up on social media, kids get bullied at school, we get criticized at work. How much do you think the people around you need an encouraging and affirming word? Maybe as you and I start this week, We can decide that every single day we are going to look for someone that we know probably needs a word of encouragement, a word of affirmation. And we're going to try to find somebody to bring an encouraging word to. If you and I would do that, God would use us. God would use us to be a blessing to so many others in ways that you may never even expect or know. And I promise you something else is going to happen. It's going to happen in your soul and put a smile on your face. This week, just remember how important it is to people, even the greatest president in the history of the United States, to have a word of affirmation. It's something you can offer, and you can be a blessing this week as you go out and love your neighbor, no exception. Have a great day.